everyone. I'm so excited to be here back at the second annual, the 2023 Anderson School of Business Annual Sports Global Business Forum. I'm very excited and honored to be at UCLA. If you were here last year, you heard me say this. UCLA is very special to me. I was actually born at UCLA. There's my mom over there. My dad was an undergrad here, so it always feels good to be home. But even more than that, I'm honored to be sharing the stage with these four fabulous women who are doing big things in the world of sports and media. And so let me introduce them very briefly because they're going to introduce themselves. We have Ashley Combs, who is Director of Basketball Marketing for Excel Sports Management. Give it up for Ashley. Brittany Royce, who is Senior Director of Entertainment and Unscripted for NBC Universal. We have Asani Swan, who is founder of Business Beyond the Ball and I Am Wholehearted. And Katrina Polanka, who is Vice President of Global Partnerships for the San Antonio Spurs. So this is a new generation of women, visionaries, trailblazers, barrier breakers, who are making moves in the world of sports. And today, we're going to accomplish two things. It's a celebration of their accomplishments, but also we're hoping that they share their insights for how you all can go back to your prospective jobs and create a more diverse and equitable sports industry. So with that, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I share a personal connection with each woman on this panel. I'm so glad to bring this energy to the stage. And I think that people are always asking us, how did we get to where we are? People always ask me, were you an athlete? And I say, unless you count being the boxball queen in 4th grade, an athlete, no, I was not. So we're going to dive into their origin stories to give you a chance to get to know them. They're going to give that to you in 2 minutes or less, and we're going to start with Katrina.
Hi, I'm a failed pre-med student who decided to follow a passion for writing. I am
also a failed pre-med student.
Well, that we have in common. But you know the deal, Asian household, some of you can probably relate. My parents were really disappointed when I told them that I was not going to become a doctor. I changed my major to communications, and that kind of set sail the rest of the trajectory. I was born and raised on Guam, and in 2013, I visited New York for the first time and fell in love with the city, as I was telling Asani. A year later, I was about to graduate from college, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I applied to anything and everything, master's programs, internships, jobs, and ended up landing an account executive role at Reuterfin PR. A year into that, I shot my shot with Keisha on LinkedIn through a cold DM, and she messaged me back and gave me a chance. She hired me as the Global Marketing Solutions Coordinator, and that not only gave me a job that was stable enough for me to afford my rent, but also gave me my big break in sports. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned in this industry is it only takes that one big break, that one person to believe in you. And that I didn't even know this world existed in partnerships before I joined the Brooklyn Nets, and that kind of put me on the path to where I am now. 4 years after that, esports was blowing up like crazy, and even though I had not ever played video games and still don't, I knew that I wanted to be on the forefront of pioneering this really weird space, and moved to San Francisco to be their Director of Sponsorship Operations and Strategy at Twitch. I intended to stay there for 4 years, as one does when they give you RSUs that don't vest until 4 years later. But the Spurs ended up calling 2.5 years into that, delaying my sabbatical and moving to San Antonio. And Keisha was one of the 5 people I called when I was deciding whether I was going to take this job. Called 5 people, 2 friends, 2 mentors, including Keisha, and my mom. 5 people so that the vote could be uneven. And it was 3-2. 3-2 yes for San Antonio. So 2.5 years later, here I am.
Thank you, thank you. Asani.
Well, I also started out as pre-med.
That's 3 of us.
3 of us. I don't like to say we failed. We just decided to to transition into something else.
Pivot. We pivoted.
There you go.
Yeah, it was a pivot. It was absolutely the right one, but I still love medicine. But my origin story actually is a black girl from San Jose, California, growing up in an incredibly diverse space. As you guys know, San Jose, lots of tech happening there, incredibly diverse place to grow up and live, but generally one of the only black students in classrooms, no black teachers, and so I learned at a very early age that I really needed to push myself forward in the things that I wanted to accomplish. And so it started, actually, my origin story really started out in the 5th grade when I auditioned for an opportunity to play Snow White. And at that stage, you're so young. They're like, who wants to audition? I raised my hand. And I remember all of the kids laughing and saying, you can't be Snow White. And I was like, why not? And they're like, because you're black. And I was like, oh no. And at that point, I decided that I would never allow a barrier to be in place for me to not achieve what I accomplished. We actually, thank you. We actually changed the name of the play to be more inclusive. It became Snow Cool and the Seven Twits. It was a satire that was written by one of the moms. But it taught me at an early age that if you want to do something, you're going to have to take a risk on you. You are going to have to push yourself forward, and then you're going to have to deliver what you say that you are going to deliver. And so fast forward, when I had the opportunity to make a transition into sports, I actually was coming from a retail background into the sports industry, and the opportunity was actually not glamorous at all. Her job titles are like amazing. Mine was assistant to Carmelo Anthony, and I had just gotten my MBA, and I was like, pass. And thankfully, I have a group of sisters who said, give it a shot. Just see what you can turn it into. You know who you are. You know what you've accomplished. You have a track record of creating things out of nothing. And so I did. I went on that interview and I moved from Atlanta to Denver. I was Mello's assistant for 6 months. It was painstakingly difficult for him and I. I had no idea that being an assistant takes the amount of skill set and mind, like forward thinking, to be a really good one. And so I finally had to sit him down. I'm like, I really am horrible at this job. And I said, I'm sure you're miserable as I have booked flights for you to places that you're not going. And he said, yeah, I am. And I said, let me build your business and your brand, and let's hire you an assistant who actually knows how to do this work, and let's build from there. And so 15 years later, we are still building, and that's how I got my start.
Well, I'm gonna break it. Definitely not pre-med, was never pre-med, knew my lane, was not that. I'm born and raised here in LA native, and I grew up playing sports, so it feels very real to be here on this court, with no sneakers on, and speaking to you all. But yeah, definitely wasn't pre-med, but I knew, listen, I was no Lisa Leslie, I was no Candace Parker. I was very clear about my path, and it wasn't necessarily the basketball court after high school. And so I had the opportunity to attend an HBCU, Southern University, and was exposed to culture, okay, with a capital C. Born and raised here in LA, but listen, my school was diverse, but this was a whole nother experience. But it gave me sort of a taste of what I wanted my world to look like. And so with that experience, I had the opportunity to have my first internship / production assistant job at BET, which I am so forever grateful for to this day, because it exposed me to diverse corporate, right? And I was like, oh, there are people that look like me. There is Stephen Hill, who is the head of programming, who is a black man, a straight black man, and he, has a vision. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Fast forward, so I graduate, first job, Lionsgate, huge movie studio, not the same diversity. I was like, now wait a minute. I thought this. I was like, wait, what happened? And so that also was a true learning of like, oh no, the industry does not look exactly like it did at BET, but it can, right? And so from there, I found my way into development and unscripted, transitioned over to NBC Universal, and similar to you, I was a coordinator, and I'm like, a coordinator? Like, wait a minute, I have a little bit more to offer. But to be truthful, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so at the time, the network that I was working for had a specific type of programming. I was able to get exposed to development and current production, sort of found my way, found my lane, started absorbing shows, started overseeing Bad Girls Club, RIP, and some other programming, and then slowly that brand transitioned into crime programming. I sort of worked my way up in the company, got promoted here and there, and then we sort of exploded into a content team that at the time then and now, we work across the board. So I now am the Senior Director of Development and Current Production at NBC Universal for the cable networks and Peacock. So Bravo, E, USA, Oxygen, Peacock. That's sort of my area. And I have really been able to use the knowledge that I learned, I would say, at BET, and knowing that the room should look like me. And so when it comes time for me to review a pitch or to oversee a show, whether it's Olympic highlights with Kevin Hart and Snoop, or even Trippin' with Anthony Anderson and his mom as they explore Europe, I am constantly just sort of forward thinking and making sure that the content that I make, that I am involved with, looks and represents what the world is. So that is my journey, but no pre-med.
Thank you. Ashley, bring us home.
So I actually have never had a single other career ambition other than to work in basketball. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I grew up in gyms my entire life, and so pretty much, from college on, everything was in pursuit of that. I went to school at the University of Connecticut and did my undergrad and my grad work there, and did a number of different things in our athletic departments, but most prominently I had the opportunity to work for Hall of Fame head coach Jim Calhoun in the men's basketball program, which was really sort of the stepping stone for me to pursue a career in basketball thereafter. So in between my grad school years, I interned at what was at that time a very small basketball agency, Excel Sports Management, which is where I work now. But at the time, only a basketball agency, about 8 people in the company. And so I had the opportunity to really make a mark as an intern and really cultivate those relationships, both throughout the internship period and then even when I went back to school, because the president of the company was the agent for my head coach. And so lots of synergy between being at UConn and then also with Excel. After I graduated from grad school, I went to San Antonio, and I interned with the Spurs for a year and then stayed on 2 years full time. And I worked in the community department, so worked with a team of folks on fundraising initiatives, on NBA Cares initiatives on the NBA side, but really had the opportunity to lead community initiatives for our AHL hockey team and then also our WNBA team at the time as well. And so did that for 3 years. Spurs were really successful. My last year there, they won a championship, which was great. Felt like a good time to make a transition. So I came back to Excel 9 years ago this month, which is crazy. And same sort of thing, right? 27 years old, master's degree, had won a world championship, had won a national championship. I started as an assistant for one of our agents here in LA. And then just over the 9 years have moved up. Primarily what I do in my job is I have a number of NBA clients who are assigned to me, and I handle their off-court business, whatever that may be. So for our younger players, that's helping them to transition into league life, get acclimated in their new cities, learn how to have difficult conversations with mom and dad as they're transitioning into having all this money. And then for the veteran guys who are on my roster, it's really helping them to cultivate passions, and we'll talk about it for sure, but I work with players like CJ McCollum, and I run his wine business. I work with players like Russell Westbrook and Blake Griffin, and all of their various passions as well. So a pretty standard sort of trajectory in the sports industry. It is the only thing I've ever wanted to do, and happy to be here.
I'm just saying that Ashley, we haven't won a championship since she was at the Spurs.
Need to come back.
I'm a winner. That's all I'm trying to say.
So you see a lot of connectivity across the panel. So we're going to dive in with that. Keep that context in mind as we dive into our topic. We're going to start with Asani and Ashley. Both of you have major roles in shaping the off-court brands of 2 very high-profile athletes. Essentially, you are responsible for validating they're more than an athlete mantras that each embodies. Asani, you with 10-time NBA All-Star Carmelo Anthony. Ashley, you just mentioned you work very closely with CJ McCollum, who is a New Orleans Pelican, and my boss as president of the National Basketball Players Association. Asani, why don't you talk a little bit about your longstanding partnership with Carmelo and how you're working with him to actualize and maximize all of his after graduation ventures, as he likes to call them. Speak specifically about Creative 7 and his wine company.
Well, thank you very much. So I think one of the things is people have been asking me about this post-graduation, and he is for sure not wanting to use the word retirement. And I understand that. I remember growing up, my dad, who is an oral physician, told me that by the time I stop working, I will have had 6 careers. And I thought that was such an interesting statement to make. But now that I am in career 3 and 4 right now, I can absolutely see how that's possible. And Melo is in his 2nd career as a businessman off the court. And so I'd mentioned how I came in, we started working together 2009. And at the time, it was an integral part in his career where we needed to rebrand who people thought he was. I think one of the most interesting things is that the narrative of what you all get to read and experience isn't always what's true. There are nuggets of truth there, but then there is what the media sometimes will run with and create story to get more eyeballs, get more people attached. And at the time, Melo really was in need of a rebranding and remessaging about who he actually was, not the mistakes that he had made in the past. And so we did that, and that took some time. And so as we fast forward into the last 5 years of us working together, one of the things that we put a lot of energy into was, what are some of the things that you want to do when you leave the NBA? And how do we start working on those things now so that we are in the right position when that time comes? And so we did not just start working on Creative 7 when he graduated this past May. We started working on both Vin the Seventh Estate and Creative 7 5 years ago and building those companies up. What's really interesting about that is that Melo and I decided that we'll be business partners. So we've transitioned from a client relationship to a business partnership that allows for us both to grow and realize each other's skill sets and the value of what we bring to an organization. And that's been a lot of fun. But one of the things that you have to do in the positions that we are all in is you have to be able to see forward. You have to be able to see and create vision where sometimes there isn't one. And I think we all have that particular skill set in common, and it's a transferable skill, but you have to use it. Because if you can't create in your mind what can be, it's really hard for that thing to become. And so that's really what I've been doing, is coming up with concept, coming up with new business ideas, and then creating that. So Melo and I are employee 1 and 2 of Creative 7 and Vin the Seventh Estate. It is only us two still to this day, and that was also by design. The reason we did that is because we wanted to learn these businesses from the ground up. In order for us to have a healthy company, the strong foundation had to be that we wanted to learn everything that would be required in order for this business to be successful. So everything that you see, anything that you see that has Creative 7 on it, or anything you see within the wine organization of Vin the Seventh Estate, Carmelo Anthony and Asani Swan have been in the trenches together, sometimes battling it out like we did yesterday. I'm like, I'm right. He's like, no, listen to me. Listen, I don't want to. You're wrong. He was right on this one, I'll give it. But, having the opportunity to battle it out with respect, to be able to get to this point has been a lot of fun. So look forward to 2024. We have a lot of wonderful things coming, but it has not been an easy road at all in order to get here. And when you do see those things, whoever it is, whatever celebrity, whatever we're doing, please understand there was blood, sweat, and tears in order for us to get here. And we have to do a better job of telling that story and that journey of what it took for us to do this work. So
Lots of tears.
a lot
I'm sure
of
Ashley
tears.
can relate, especially when it comes to the wine industry. CJ is very focused on his vineyard at his home and the partnership that he has. So can you talk a little bit about how he's democratizing the wine industry, or his goal to do that, and speak to the relationship that you guys have with Roots Fund?
Yeah, so CJ and I have been working together. This will be our 9th season working together. I started working with him at the end of his 2nd season in the NBA. There were no community platforms at that time. There were no corporate partnerships. We really were working together to figure out sort of what it is that we wanted to build for him while he was in career. And I will say that CJ was always really focused on post-career as well. So everything that we've been doing over the course of this 9 years has been focused on being really great where we are now, and then also being really great and setting him up for post-career as well. And then the other thing I'll say that sort of leads into your question is that impact had always been at the forefront of everything that we were doing. So we started by thinking about how we wanted to impact the communities where he was working and where he grew up. But I think that impact, you see that pretty much in everything that he does, right? So we had impact in communities, we still do. He has impact in terms of leadership. He is president of the NBA Players Association. When we decided to get into wine, we really wanted to make sure that impact was at the focus of that as well. Wine is just a white man's game, if we're being honest. And CJ was starting out, a wine brand in Oregon, which is a place that plenty of great people, but not really a diverse place, right? And so we were just thinking about it in the ways that we think about everything that we do. How are we creating opportunities for people who look like us to be in these spaces? And that means at the entry level, that means at senior levels, that is introducing people to wine, people who just want to drink it, and we want to make sure that they feel comfortable doing it. And it's also making sure that if people want to build careers in this industry, that they get the opportunity to do that. And I think we understand, and I'm sure it's the same for Melo and Asani, like the platform that NBA players have, we have a great opportunity to be able to dive in, build great relationships, work our tails off, but to do that quickly enough that we can come in and start talking about impact from the very beginning. And so how do we do that? We do that with great partners. We do that with our friends in the wine industry as well. It's one of my favorite things about being in wine, quite frankly, is that all of CJ's friends who are basketball players are in wine, and then all of my friends are the people that work with them in the wine industry as well. And that's been an incredible experience because it's not competitive. It's a hard business. You have to put in the work, and I think especially as a celebrity brand, you have to put in the work because folks need to understand that you're serious about it. And so we've done that through supporting one another, and then we've done that through relationships with community organizations. And so the Roots Fund is an organization that we work with, and they are incredible. What they do is create opportunities for Black and brown people to get into this wine industry, and they do it at a really high level. So they're taking trips to Burgundy, they're taking trips to Cape Town, they are in Oregon, they're in California, they are creating the opportunities. The woman who runs the organization is beating down people's doors, and she's been an incredible partner to us both in terms of execution, but also in terms of being a thought partner on how we can do what we're trying to do where we are right now, because like Asani and Carmelo, we've been building this for about 4 or 5 years, but that means we're still very much in our infancy, and so we are trying to have impact where we are right now, and then we're trying to grow that impact as we grow the business as well.
Thank you. There's so many common themes: impact, creating access, and so with that, we're going to transition to Brittany and how you do that through your storytelling. So, as a development exec for NBC Universal, you're using media to reshape narratives, whereas these two are reshaping athlete brands. Recent examples are we saw a highlight of the Snoop show with Kevin Hart for the Olympics, which I think made the Olympics more accessible. No disrespect to the Olympics. And your Black Pop show, which is streaming now on Peacock. Everybody should check it out. With that featured notable athletes such as Steph Curry, Layla Ali, FloJo, Dominique Dawes, and more. Can you talk about your approach to storytelling, specifically in unscripted formats, and how you are working to amplify underrepresented voices?
Yeah, so Olympic highlights, I would say, is probably a really, really good example. Gotta be honest. We were like, what are we doing? What is this? I'm like, don't, Kevin, Snoop, please, I want to keep my job. We were very nervous, but we were up for the challenge, and that was for us to merge two worlds that are pop culture and sports. And quite frankly, I mean, listen, I work for NBC, so I feel like I can say this. The Olympics, not the most known diverse brand, right? And so we had an opportunity to sort of change the narrative on that. And luckily, we were able to produce this show with Heartbeat, Kevin Hart's company. So at the forefront, we had lots of diversity in the writer's room, our producers, our production assistants, our showrunners. But it was really important for us to, on one note, be taken serious, right? Like, I don't know, a lot of people may or may not know, but like Snoop knows his sports, right? I kind of was like, are you drinking a Corona? Like, what are we doing? I mean, I know Snoop knows, but I wasn't really sure. And then Kevin, he does, but Snoop knew a little bit more, but Kevin, I would say, was much more, he was stronger with guiding the show, if that makes sense. So I say all this to say, we were making magic. We didn't realize it, and it was sort of a shot in the dark, and that is, I think, the risk that you have to take. Like, sitting in this seat, being at the table, being in development is all about having a vision. But for me, again, going back to where I originated and learning at BET and knowing that diversity is always important, having that vision and being forward thinking and knowing, like, okay, so if we're gonna do Olympics, we're gonna talk about Simone Biles. Like, I don't even, unfortunately, with what's happening, like, we're gonna talk about her, we're gonna have her on the show, and we are going to give her an opportunity to tell her story in an entertaining form. Like, to be clear, this isn't a platform for certain things. However, it's an entertainment show, but we're human. This is our sister. It's Kevin and Snoop. They were totally like excited and on board, and she was too. But I say all that to say, and the forward thinking as we are coming up with the creative, as we're sitting down looking at the moments within the Olympics to sort of touch on, always knowing, like, well, got to make sure that it is representative of our host, of our production company, and of our audience. And we really, I'm just gonna be honest. We changed the game. No one has.
Shout yourself out.
I'm just saying, we changed the game. No one can and has, sort of covered the Olympics in that capacity, and we're excited potentially, for next year to do the same thing. And then, so for Black Pop is my baby. That's my boo. And Black Pop, I work in development and current production, so it might sound like, what is that? I take the pitches, I have ideas, I assign them to producers or production companies, we flush it out, we figure out what the show is, we present it up to the gods that are our stakeholders, they like it, they buy it, we then go into series. I did exactly that for Black Pop. I took the pitch, I worked on it, worked it through development, and then went into series. And so Black Pop, just to sort of familiarize you with the show, it initially started as one of our executive producers. It was her thesis paper. I don't know if she was getting her master's or her doctorate, but she had this idea to sort of lean in and delve into how Black pop culture influenced culture across the board. But there's this through line of the American dream, which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, you just made something that was very educational, entertaining. And we were able to flush it out in 4 episodes. So we had our sports, we had music, film, and TV. And it was a challenge, because again, you have this through line and this thesis of the American dream, but then I need you to keep watching, because I need you to make sure that at the act break you come back. So we had to really figure out the flow and the balance of the show, and whether it was, identifying the perfect talent to speak to certain points, or, making sure that we had the right showrunner. But in all, I would say that project probably, again, in addition to it being my baby, I'm really the most proud of it, because not only does it celebrate us, but it sort of shows the influence that we have and the influence we will continue to have. And I hope, for if you haven't seen it yet, or people who have seen it, you're inspired by it. You're like, oh yeah, right. Like, Brandon Marshall is totally like doing something that I can do. Or, oh, right, Steph Curry, although he may not have come from humble beginnings, he still like had a little hustle in him, and it wasn't handed to him, and I can do that too. So I would just say, like, again, knowing the seat that I have and knowing the power that I hold with taking pitches, with coming up with ideas, and essentially changing the narrative for media, it is very important for me to always make sure that, my stuff is diverse and Black. If you look at my slate, you're like, oh, she Black. She Black, her stuff is Black. And so, yeah, that's important.
Thank you. I think another thing I'm hearing all you guys talk about is sort of risk-taking, having the right people in the room. I think, Katrina, you took a little bit of risk in your approach to getting a new naming rights partner for the San Antonio Spurs. I remember we were somewhere, I think a year ago, and you were telling me, I don't just want the biggest name for this deal who's going to pay us the most amount of money. I want someone who's going to have social impact, who's going to partner with us to make a difference in the community. And so you just did landmark deals with Frost Bank for the naming rights of the arena and with Self Financial for the Jersey Patch partnership. Why don't you talk a little bit about what was that prospecting process like? How do you get that partner on board? Tell us about that deal.
Yeah. So as of 2 weeks ago, AT&T Center is now the Frost Bank Center, and it makes its debut tomorrow during our open practice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're really excited. Frost has been a partner of the Spurs for more than 50 years. We actually tried to dig up the contracts, and we couldn't find the oldest contract. They started by being the bank that funded the salary that we needed to get our first star player, and they funded the very first Jumbotron. So there's a lot of history there, which actually made the process really hard. Why would a partner that's already spending 7 figures with you spend what we were asking for when they already have all of this branding, they have the equity built with our fan base, and it provided a unique challenge for us to go in and come and pitch something new. In February of 2023, they released the results of a study they commissioned around financial belonging. And financial belonging is defined as the feeling of importance and connectedness in a person's banking relationship. And the premise was that, and what they found in the study was that if you feel like you belong, you're almost 2 times more likely to be in better financial health. And it was the first time that I had read a study that was not about financial wellness or financial health, because those 2 things put the burden on you. They say you don't know enough about your 401k, you don't know enough about your 529 or how to invest. Financial belonging was the first time that a bank or an institution had said, maybe some of this is on us. Maybe some of this is on us creating an environment where people feel like they can even ask the question and feel like they have the right to be educated on their finances. So being the marketer that I am, I'm like, that is a really good premise for us to create a foundation on why Frost, a partner of 50 years, needed to come up and spend at this level. No one in here is Googling financial belonging, but if you have an arena that activates 365 days a year with 115 events and 3 million attendees, you might have a stage upon which you can start to talk about what financial belonging is. And the importance of just naming it, even if you're not a customer of Frost, which most people outside of Texas wouldn't be. It creates a new bar. If they start to talk about financial belonging and naming that right that people have to feel like they belong at their bank, they will start to expect more out of their own banks. So we're collaborating on figuring out what that programming looks like. Something coming up for us is creating a reality kind of game of life, real life board during a January game, which is when we're all thinking about finances because you've just spent a ton of money over the holidays and it's New Year, New Me, and you're going to try to save and invest. January is a very important month in financial services. So they're going to take over one of our games and have that be the theme. So we're really excited about the investment that they've made there and looking forward to what the actual programming looks like.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Self Financial and builders building their dreams and how that aligns with the San Antonio Spurs as well?
Yeah, so Self Financial is a credit building company. It was founded by a guy who accidentally ruined his credit. He opened up a credit card as a college student and he forgot to pay it. Years later, he's applying to an apartment and he doesn't know why he's getting rejected, realizes that he just never paid this bill. And he is a white man, and he said, I'm a white man and I didn't know how to fix it. Imagine someone who doesn't have access to the resources. And that's how he built Self. And the concept is you pay into this account for a select number of months, call it 12. $25 a month goes into this account. At the end of the term, you can pull out all of the money that you've saved. And in the process, you've built your credit because you've proven that you can pay $25 a month on time. And this was their first foray into any sort of sports partnership, and they started really big by investing in the patch. And our tie to that, where we saw inspiration, was that the Spurs have a history of having really strong international rosters. And if you're not American in particular, you don't come into the country with credit. So living in San Antonio, 5 hours away from the border, that becomes really important for us to help first generation Americans figure out how to build their credit so that you can buy a car to get to your job, to earn money to pay for your house. It's all a domino effect that starts with, do you have enough credit to be able to get that loan that you need to make that first step? And so the biggest challenge internally, to be honest, was the Spurs are known for teamwork. Check your ego at the door. There is no I in team. And guess what word is on our patch? Self. Oh my gosh, the conversations we had to have with Pop to let us do that. He was like, we're not putting the word self on a team jersey. But for the right price, we will.
Thank you. Based on the work that each of you have done to promote inclusivity, what advice would you give to sports brands, media companies, and teams to better promote diversity and inclusion? And I'll start by sharing a personal thing. I think intention is very important. I hear a lot of you talking about being intentional. And at Think 450 last year, we started my role. I am the SVP of Partnerships and Purpose, and it is my team's responsibility to make sure that all of our partnerships are purpose-driven, and so that we are amplifying diverse voices. What do you guys tell brands that they need to do, or media companies, or sports teams?
Well, intention was going to be mine, so I'll speak very quickly and then pass the mic. But one of the things that I had the opportunity to lead for my company at Excel a couple of years ago was our diversity and inclusion task force. And the big thing is that everybody says they want to be working in this way. You just have to make harder decisions. It's harder to do this kind of work than it is to do things the way that you've always done it. So you may, as you're looking for candidates, you may have to go the extra mile. You may need to put this job on job boards that are featuring more diverse candidates. Whatever it is that you want to do, everything that we've tried to do, it would be much easier for me to just sell bottles of wine than it would be for me to figure out how to make it better for other Black people to work in wine. So that intentionality, I think, is really important. You have to do the work, the actual work to get that done.
I would say for me, what I thought was very interesting, right after the George Floyd's, unfortunate tragedy, and a lot of the corporations that came out and diversity.
The Black Square.
Mm-hmm. But then, I'm not gonna say it died, but I will say people forgot, right? And so for me, again, realizing the position that I have, having a seat at the table, I have no problem reminding people, like, no, remember diversity, remember you said it was important, remember you like this idea, this is something in the diverse space, a diverse production company and producer should make it. I cannot tell you how sad it is, at least for me, when growing up in this industry, and even now when I sit back and I see some shows and Black people are not making it, and it is for Black people, or it is for a certain community, and you can tell it's not made by them. So taking advantage of, again, the seat that I have, I make sure that when we want to do certain things in certain spaces, that we are putting the right people, I'm reminding the higher ups that we are putting the right people in the right positions, and making sure if you want to do a show with Kevin and Snoop talking about pop culture, it has to be by a diverse team. It's just it has to happen, and so therefore I find myself just holding the room accountable.
I love that.
And speaking up, not having a problem speaking up.
I love that. I would echo everything that these ladies have said. I think there's a few other things I just want to share. One is the commitment, and they spoke to it, but we need more than just us. And it is going to require you to do things differently. And you can't do the same thing the same way all the time and expect a different result. So it does require a little bit of digging. It also is going to require, at some point, that you're going to have to try to or establish trainings to give others opportunities where they haven't had them before. So it does also require some risk on your part. And that's one of the things that I like to remind people. And also, I'm in that same position. There are times where I'm reminded I'm a rookie as a TV and film producer. Like, oh, well, you haven't had experience. And so one of the things that I have to always do and remind is, but we can do the work, and we have the partnerships. And so being able to help and remind people that it's not always about the way that you frame a job or an opportunity, it's really thinking about, can this individual or can this team actually execute based on other experiences that they've had? The other thing is that there are other spaces, not just the person and who I am and being hired on as a team, but because I came from a retail background in supplier diversity and organizational development, there are other ways to include diversity in your everyday workspace. And so finding vendors that can provide services that you may not see on the front line, but are an integral part to how a business or how a project gets made is another way that you can include diversity into the projects that you're working on. And then the last thing I'll say is this, that as individuals and as we stand right now, each and every one of us is a diverse individual based on who you are. And so I like to remind companies and brands, media companies, that who I am is a plethora of things with many, many layers. And do you have an organization where I am welcome based on my skill set, my education, my age, my beliefs, the way I dress, my family background? Are those things that when I walk into your building, do I feel comfortable? And if the answer is no, or you have to ask a question, then there is work to be done, because we should all feel welcome wherever we go and whatever we do. So those are the things that I would say.
Anything to add?
I would say hire diverse executives and listen to them. And I'll give you an example of one where the Spurs made a mistake. In the last year, our brand campaign, because we're heavily Hispanic, was Por Vida. And it literally translates into for life. And the reason they launched it was because we were sucking. We were like 29th out of 30th. So we needed like, for life, where once we start to get good again, we weren't part of that bandwagon. That was the campaign. It actually does not translate well into Spanish. Por Vida, if you really wanted to use the phrase for life in Spanish, it doesn't work that way. You can't just literally translate those words. There was no one of Hispanic background on that campaign.
Thank you. We are running out of time, so I'm going to fast forward to our last question. This has been so great. I hope that everyone took away some inspiration, took away some insights, appreciated the conversation that we've had. I've appreciated holding space with you ladies. In the sports episode of Black Pop, Stephen A. Smith, my fave, said the most powerful piece in chess is the queen. Clearly, that is true for all of you all. So I would like to end, we'll start with you, Ashley. What is your next move?
My next move is to figure out how to sell more wine first and foremost.
Where can we get that wine right now?
You can get that wine
I'm supporting.
at McCullumHeritage91.com. Lots of varietals, thank you. But honestly, it is continuing to identify opportunities where I can walk into spaces as myself, be myself, and to pursue, doing the best work of my life and having the kind of impact that I seek to have.
Thank you.
I'm going for gold. And I don't mean Olympic gold, because again, she's no Lisa Leslie. But I am really prioritizing and wanting the work that I do to be acknowledged by my peers. And when I say gold, I mean Emmy gold.
Ooh, I'm putting that in the universe for you.
Put it out there. So as I continue to, develop and make the shows that I make that, which, like I said, most of them are representative of our community, of our culture, I would like to be acknowledged. I would like for these shows and these projects to really get the attention that it deserves. And so I have a few documentaries in the works and a few projects in the works, but I'm going for gold. That's my
put it
next
out.
step.
I love that. I will be supporting.
Let us know what we can do.
I'm already buying wine.
I know.
I have no more space for wine. But that doesn't mean I'll stop buying it. And Keisha, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and to share with all of you. My next move is the move I'm in right now, which is to build a global wine brand, a well-known TV and film production company that tells our stories, tells them well, and honors the individuals and the voices that have not been heard in the past. And I hope to do that with the intention of taking care of myself and to creating the proper boundaries, the healthy boundaries that allow me to live a life of the life that I've created, which is with joy. Guys, listen, I don't want to just work for a living. I really want to enjoy my life. And so I've really taken a lot of time to figure out what that looks like and to still be able to build these careers in these companies that I so much enjoy. So to do that well is my intention in my next move.
Here's to joy.
Cheers.
From a business perspective, we are very excited about the gift that is Victor Wembanyama. So we are trying to figure out France and how to get partnerships in a country that is so far away. And from a personal perspective, I don't know when next is, but 6-month sabbatical in Italy.
Ooh, that sounds good. Can I go? I want to thank Jay Tucker. I want to thank UCLA, and I want to thank you for giving us your attention. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.